Not easy to find vintage jazz records featuring Kenny Dorham or Hank Mobley for $15, but here's one of them. This is on Mercury. This is one of Roach's pianoless dates, and the effect is pretty cool. Everything's sort of less boxed in by chord changes, a bit untamed. The prices for this record are all over the place online, but you can score a copy of this between $10 and $20 if you keep your wits about you. No brainer. Pick this up if you don't have it. George Adams, Paradise Space Shuttle. This record smokes. Great date on Timeless or Timeless Muse. Adams plays tenor and flute. Things get spiritual. Things get funky. There are times when he flirts with the avant-garde, but in general, this doesn't go too far outside. Awesome record, and is still only $15. This is Robin Kenyatta's Beggars and Stealers. This is on Muse. Very enjoyable. I was surprised by this. I know Kenyatta's got that album on ECM. I'm not that familiar with his discography, but this is a real sleeper. It has that sort of 60s era swinging, unresolved modal thing, like some of those Miles or Herbie Hancock records. And in fact, this was cut from a live date in the 60s. The album does end in a single studio track. It's a really beautiful duet of Monk's Ruby My Dear. But if you assume this was sort of hastily stitched together like I did, you would be mistaken. This is a great record. The fidelity is not perfect, but I think the recording actually captures something really special. Underrated. Check this out. Here's a record that often makes ECM Top 10 lists, and this is one of my favorite fusion records of all time. I think this is especially compelling if you like prog rock. It's one of the more familiar titles on the label. I don't think this stays in record stores long, but it does remain just $12 to $15 for a clean copy when you do find it. Essential. Rand Blake, The Short Life of Barbara Monk. This might run you more like $20 to $25, so it's a bit more. But this is a really significant album, and that's not just coming from me. This has been talked about plenty. Flowing, beautiful, at times unusual music. And released in 1987, this is the kind of record you're not going to encounter on the audiophile reissue market, which is exploding with titles. I think some outfit announced they're even doing Muse now. I can't keep up with all of the series. But generally speaking, dates past 75 don't often make it into the packaging and fidelity circuit. Here's another one you have to dig a little deeper for, owing to its late date, 1986. This isn't getting an audiophile release. This is on Enya. Wonderful post-bop record. There's a guy, I think El Bicho Feo, I think is his name. He did like 4 videos just on Enya, and those are definitely worth checking out. But this is very elegant, adventurous. You have this interesting pairing between Kenny Barron and Dave Holland, who's behind In a Silent Way, all sorts of interesting titles. Yeah, once upon a time, like many collectors, I think I drew this line in the sand that jazz past 75 or 1980 was not worthwhile. And I'm not talking about taste, right? If you like hard bop or if you like swing, that's what you like, and that's okay. But at least for me, it was more about, I don't know, like a stigma of sorts. Anyway, it's these kinds of records that show how arbitrary those guardrails are. Good stuff. Check this out. Here's another great soul note title from George Adams. That's a bit easier to secure in the States and a little more affordable. Soul Note was a sister label to Black Saint, which was home to avant-garde and free jazz in the late 70s and 80s. Supposedly the idea was to make Soul Note more of a mainstream jazz counterpart. So you have spiritual movers and solo piano records, and you have avant-garde, but you also have records that are, in fact, quite straight ahead. This is live at Laurent. Lee has a bigger band here, not a big band, but he's assembled everything to have a bigger band sound, very swinging, upbeat. This is a nice record for $10 on Soul Note that I listen to all the time. But this record from George I think lands somewhere in the middle with his acerbic style. Standout track on this is Jabooby. Really soulful, grooving composition from Hugh Lawson. So good. Do yourself a favor. Pick this up if you don't have it. Great record. Really fun record from Yusef Lateef. Elevated by a sublime rhythm section. Cecil McBee, Chuck Rainey on Fender bass, Roy Brooks, Bernard Purdy. This follows Detroit and musically takes a left turn, or several left turns. Some of this is Lateef's relaxed, sparse interpretations of the early 60s. You've got spiritual stuff. You've got African influence stuff. You've got funky R&B, which he would continue to explore throughout his Atlantic tenure. I don't like all of Lateef's stuff on Atlantic, but this is another good record. The Hush and the Thunder, especially if you like to get down and have people over, or if you're like me and actively avoid inviting people to your home, these records are still great. Sound and Shadows. So good. I had this one on today. This is the follow-up to Solstice, which I don't have. This is emblematic of the ECM sound. Somber, moody, classical influence. Borrowing some from Oregon. I think the first track, Distant Hills, is an Oregon tune. Anyway, great record. Easy pickup if you see this. Here's a 60s Riverside you can score for $20 or less from Billy Taylor. Swinging, easygoing, features Henry Grimes before he would join the free jazz movement in the 60s and somewhat infamously disappear. I highly recommend seeking this out. It's harder and harder to find affordable originals from the seminal NYC labels. This is definitely a good one. Check it out. Freddie Hubbard, Keep Your Soul Together. Hubbard's stuff on CTI is interesting because unlike a lot of his peers, it's some of his best output, and certainly his most successful records were his CTI records. This is one I don't see shared quite as frequently, and I really like this album. It's essentially electric hard bop, perhaps a little funky. A great album, I think, for people who are newer to jazz and are looking for records in record stores to build their collections. But even if you're more seasoned, wonderful title, accessible, not necessarily all that commercial. My favorite Freddie Hubbard CTI record is, of course, this. Did you think I was going to say Red Clay? Red Clay and Straight Life are basically 1A and 1B, but a copy of Straight Life remains less than half the price of Red Clay. Sort of similar to Miles' Electric Period. Amazing musicians on this. Both are great records. Check them out. New Wine in Old Bottles, Jackie McClean with the Great Jazz Trio. It has been said by some that this is McClean's best album of the 70s, with a great lineup. You've got Ron Carter, Hank Jones, Tony Williams. This is a more subdued Jackie, right? They're playing Roundabout Midnight, Never Entered My Mind, sort of a far cry from the 60s avant-garde adjacent, or even the steeplechase dates he did in the 70s, which are still pretty raw. Myself, I think I'd take something more akin to Ghetto Lullaby, but this is a great date. It's very well recorded. I think this is a wonderful late night record. Check it out. No secret here, Awakening from Sonny Fortune is at this point established cheap heat. This follows Sonny's Strata East release and in fact shares quite a bit of DNA with those kinds of records if you're unfamiliar with this. But it remains $5 instead of $500. As I've said before, I think Sonny's stuff in the 70s is really underrated and perhaps undervalued. And they're really easy to find. You can find his records all over the place. Check it out. Jimmy Rushing is certainly not in vogue right now, but this record smokes. This is sort of a concept album that explores the history of jazz through 4 cities. So each song adopts the style of New Orleans or Chicago, Kansas City, or New York. Beautifully recorded, a wonderful sounding Columbia 6i, very inexpensive. And fun fact, Jimmy Rushing was known as Mr. 5x5 because it was said he was 5 feet tall and 5 feet wide. Just great stuff.
Then she runs to me with that same old jive, you know.
I always like Pepper Adams records. You know, he plays baritone sax like a tenor player might, right? And just has a little bit more edge than maybe the better known Jerry Mulligan, who's more sort of melodic and ballad driven. This is one of his great 70s releases on Muse. And like a lot of his discography, just so unusually consistent. Pepper he didn't do Hot Dog. He didn't do disco crossover. He just focused on being the best at what he did. And his discography really benefits from that. He's on so many records. He's always so good. Anyway, that's all I got for this week, folks. Until next time, take it easy.